Heyo everybody, what's up? Tom here, back at you with another video, and today, while we're doing what we've been doing, we're continuing PoE to 0.4 on our Smith of Kitava bear druid thing that we're doing. Yeah, once I introduce my character to y'all a little bit, do a little update, we can get going. So I have gone over and switched to constricting command. It's a little bit, the thing I don't like about constricting command is that the tooltip doesn't work for it anymore. Because they made it so there has to be one enemy in your presence for to be surrounded. And so if you're just sitting in your hideout in a safe area, you're not going to get the bonus from being surrounded, which kind of sucks. So I was kind of running around in a map with my tooltip up, looking at the numbers change in real time. But that's tough because you can't see like about 1/3 of the screen, and you don't know what's going on behind there. There could be monsters throwing projectiles at you. You have no idea. So that's kind of annoying, but I have switched to it. I switched my skill tree, and it feels good. Yeah. I haven't been dying a lot. I think I'm doing more damage. Honestly, it's kind of a negligible difference. Although maybe my boss damage has noticeably gone up a little bit. So we're Smith of Kitava. Okay, so we don't get any real damage from our ascendancy. And it's getting to the point where currency is not as much of a concern anymore. I could probably get a very nice chest with more armor. As it stands right now, this thing has an additional 800 flat armor on it from my 4 Smith, or 1200 armor on it from my 4 Smith of Kitava nodes. We have chatters. What's up, Hitchens and China Chris? How you doing? So I was just saying that oh, you don't know what game this is? You don't play Path of Exile 2? It's Path of Exile 2. So I get an additional 200 armor from my 6 nodes that I have allocated here. So my chest piece does have a solid, flat 2300 armor. Now, is that very high? No. But we have insane stats on it. So 50% armor to Ellie, 25% of physical damage taken as fire damage. And unaffected by damaging ailments. And the unaffected by damaging ailments is actually critical to the build working as it does. Because, and I got this idea from Jorgen on YouTube. If you're unaffected by damaging ailments, then you can use this node, which ignites you cause are reflected back to you. So you get to be ignited all the time, as long as you're dealing damage, which you always are. So you're ignited, and normally that would mean that you degen, but we are unaffected by damaging ailments, and ignite is a damaging ailment, as it says right there. So we're ignited, and so then we get these stupid damage multipliers, like 50% increased damage while ignited. So it works like this. You ignite the enemy, and when you ignite the enemy, you ignite yourself. And when you ignite yourself, you do a lot more damage. And then on top of that, we have stuff that makes the enemy take extra damage if they're ignited. And so they're taking the ignite damage. They're taking extra damage from over here. I thought I have that somewhere. %40 increased damage with hits against ignited enemies. You see, so these are multiply against each other because they're different buckets. This is I do increased damage while ignited, but then this is increased damage with hits against ignited enemies. So one is about the state of me being ignited, so that's one bucket, and another is about the state of the enemy being ignited, so that's another bucket. So we get 40% increased damage against ignited enemies, 50% damage, 50% increased fire damage while I'm ignited, so that's 90. But it's not actually 90, it's better than that because these two are multiplicative against each other because they're in different buckets. Renata, Madry, Gal Gilmore. Now, I know that was probably horrible pronunciation, but I think I essentially got it right. How are you? Yeah, so I wonder if there's anything else I can get inside this circle. Oh, increased skill speed while shape shifted. And then, yeah. Element threshold. Element threshold. Cooldown recovery? Maybe. I think this wheel alone makes using this time lost ruby worth it. Fuck it, let's just go run some maps. Oh, let's see what I got in the store. That's what I'm talking about. What did I sell? Excellent. That's like almost a div. That's like 3/4 of a div. And guess what else I'm gonna have? Oh, I thought I was gonna have these gems. 2 div from an Omen of Whittling. We sold 2 ancients for 8 chaos. Okay. So currency-wise, I'm looking at that. 5 div. 156 chaos. 73 exalt. 1 annul. I do have this haste and battle. But I don't know, I might want to craft an item with that. The thing is, though, I already spent the currency on this weapon, and I'm pretty sure this thing is going down in value. I do have a decent one. But yeah, it looks like it's 5 div. So if I wanted to sell this, I could probably get 5 div. If I wanted to sell it immediately, I would have to sell it for 4. So I could craft a weapon safely. I have 9 div. I could craft a +5 a +5 weapon if I wanted to. I would just follow this video, because I'm always not sure when I'm using an essence, a perfect essence, what the rules are. Like, do I want the suffixes to be full, or do I want there to be an open suffix? Like that type of stuff I'm not so sure about. So if I was gonna craft a weapon, I would watch this video. But you know what? I'm doing the self-ignite thing. This has nutty fire damage, so it makes it real easy to ignite everything, which also helps me get my glory skills off. One last thing about my build. A big part of the damage comes from this amulet. So once again, thanks to Jorgen for giving me this idea. You can only run this amulet if you run Smith of Kitava, because otherwise almost every build needs to get resistances on their amulet until way late into the end game. But when on this build, you have Smith of Kitava. Your resistances are super easy to easy to take care of because of nodes in your ascendancy tree, and not because of affixes on your gear. And so you're able to get away with using this amulet, which actually gives you negative elemental resistances, but it gives you insane skill speed and damage. The critical hit chance is not bad as well. So, whereas this thing slows you down your attack speed, you're getting higher attack speed from your amulet. And so, yeah. The other thing is, I would need to rework the build, because a big part of my damage is simply doing this ability, and then stampeding.
No mana.
You need this weapon to have that ability. I suppose you could weapon swap. Then I can't sell this. But I suppose you could weapon swap, right? Why wouldn't you be able to do that? Damage, but I should be able to just go boom, boom, boom. Okay. So you can do it. I would need to get Mana Leech on my gear. I would need to get all new gear. Wait, do I? No, I'm not talking about changing my skill tree. I'm just talking about... I would just need to get Mana Leech. Oh, but Mana Leech is so hard with this because I'm doing all fire damage. That's why they have so much mana regen on the druid side of the tree. Because Because you're converting so much of your damage to Ellie. Well, no. If I had a different weapon, I could use Mana Leech on that, because the weapon I would be crafting would be high flat fizz, and then plus 6 to melee skills, or plus 5 to melee skills, whatever it is. Now Ziz did put a video out about it, which means it's going to be pretty expensive, but I think I already have a lot of the currencies required. So if I was going to buy... if I was going to buy something here... Yeah. Alright, so that's the Scissorin effect right there. What if I go up to 50? What do I get? See, 109. Mana Leech. $100 attack speed. How high does it go? It goes up to like 180. Jesus. Is it even worth it when it's that expensive? No, I'm not buying a weapon. I think I just wasted a lot of time. No, honestly, it's fine right now. Like, I need to just farm at this level for a little bit, and I'll be fine. If I'm able to save up, like, 50, 60 div, I'll be able to do whatever I need to get this build fucking mint. So it's just running maps. That's all I want to do. Alright, so... It should be Abyss that I put in my other one. Abyss with rarity? Sure. Oh, ooh, wait, yeah, no, I'm just gonna regal it. And exalt. Hell yeah, that's so much nicer than what you used to have to do. And so you can see, even though it says my armor is 14k, once I start fighting, it goes up quick.
Come here.
24. Like, my base is 24 just from having at least one enemy within 3 meters of me. And then once I start getting charges,
Challenge.
28 with 3 charges. 29.
We have a major breaking news update in the ongoing Epstein Files scandal, perhaps the biggest one we've ever talked about, and you should brace yourselves because it's both shocking and disturbing. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Alright folks, we're going to unpack all of it, but I want to give you a recap of what's going on. As we discussed in previous videos, today is the deadline for the Trump administration to comply with a federal law that Trump himself signed into law, reluctantly, that requires the Justice Department to turn over all unclassified Epstein files. As we discussed in that previous video, the Trump administration admitted that they will break the law because they're only going to release a portion of the legally mandated disclosure today. Okay, so they're breaking the law, period. They have released some of the Epstein files to the DOJ website. If you go to the DOJ website, they put together a searchable database. A couple of things to know. We're going to unpack all of this. Trump's name is currently unsearchable in that database. It's been blocked. You can't search for Trump's name. So number 2, Midas Touch, our friends, the biggest liberal political commentary network on YouTube, they are manually going through the Epstein files, and they have found at least one truly gross story from the Epstein files, an anecdote from the Epstein files, from the files themselves involving Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and a 14-year-old. And on top of all of that, there are pages and pages and pages of redactions. And Fox News apparently broke this, and Midas Touch is reporting on it, that the same standard that was used to protect the identities of victims was applied by Trump's DOJ to protect political allies. Even Fox News is admitting it. So all of this hitting at once, and we have to dive in. So let's start with the biggest story, the biggest part of the story. As Midas Touch notes from the Epstein files, during one of Jane Doe's encounters with Jeffrey Epstein, he took her to Mar-a-Lago where he introduced her to its owner, Donald J. Trump. Introducing 14-year-old Doe to Trump, Epstein elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to Doe, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and Doe felt uncomfortable, but at the time was too young to understand why. This is from the Epstein files, manually discovered in the searchable database by Midas Touch. While these visits made Doe extremely uncomfortable, Epstein and Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell, made her feel that she could not refuse them. During this time, Epstein started to pay for voice lessons for Doe and insisted that Doe not advance her career in any way without him, or could not advance her career in any way without him. When Doe expressed hesitation about spending time with Epstein and Maxwell or acquiescing to their desires, Epstein and Maxwell would threaten Doe and scold her for being, quote, ungrateful. Next paragraph. During one of Doe's encounters with Epstein, he took her to Mar-a-Lago where he introduced her to Donald J. Trump. Introducing 14-year-old Doe to Donald J. Trump, Epstein elbowed Trump playfully, asking him, referring to the 14-year-old Doe, "This is a good one, right?" Trump smiled and nodded in agreement. They both chuckled, and Doe felt uncomfortable, but at the time was too young to understand why. This is just one, and it is only due to the intrepid people over at Midas Touch manually searching through the Epstein files because, again, Trump's name, at least at the time of recording, is disabled in the search function. Friend of the show, Harry Sisson, has a really good example of what the Justice Department has effectively given us. Check this out. As he notes, here are some of the Epstein files released by Trump's DOJ. Full documents entirely redacted. There's no transparency here. The cover-up continues. Democratic Congresswoman Melanie Stansbury points this out. The DOJ's Epstein Files portal is live. We tried it and can tell you it doesn't follow the law. Trump's own chief of staff says he's in the files, yet he's not here. The law is clear. They must release all of the files, including the ones with Trump, today. And again, if you search the full Epstein library, Trump, no results found. Please try a different search. Again, at the time of recording, he's unsearchable. Then you add this on top of it. This is what adds an even more disturbing layer. As Midas Touch notes, Fox News reports that the DOJ used the same redaction standards for, quote, politically exposed individuals and government officials as it did for victims. The Justice Department redacted the names and identifiers of victims. Fox News Digital has learned that the same standards were applied to politically exposed individuals and government officials. In other words, the Trump administration is engaging in a cover-up for their political allies, for the people that Donald Trump likes. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Josiah, that's not fair. Surely that's not fair. Surely Donald Trump would be even-handed, and if he's going to protect the political elite, he would, of course, protect Democrats too, because he's not so partisan. Except there are unredacted photos of President Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein all throughout this info dump. And listen, Bill Clinton should not be protected. Of course, part of the reason that we Democrats have absolutely no compunction about this is we're not led by Bill Clinton. Like, when people are like, if you go after Trump, if you try to humiliate Trump or embarrass Trump, we're going to humiliate Bill Clinton. Who cares? Bill Clinton has not been the leader of the Democratic Party in, 25, 26 years? He's fair game. They're all fair game. Democrats or Republicans, Trump, Bill Clinton, it doesn't matter. It should not matter. But it matters to Trump. So that's how you know that the DOJ isn't, you can't even say that they're being even-handed and principled and consistent in terms of protecting the political elite, which would be bad enough, just to be clear. But they're not even doing that. They're doing something even worse. They are protecting Republicans, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. What's surprising is that Fox is effectively reporting just that. And Midas Touch, again, was the one finding this out. Harry Sisson, again, friend of the show, points out from his search that the check that Trump gave to Epstein for $22,500 for a, quote, fully depreciated, redacted woman's name, has shown up in a new photo in the Epstein files where Epstein is pictured holding the check standing next to a woman. Looks like Trump forgot to redact this. And again, this was something that was discussed in the Wall Street Journal's reporting, okay? Corroborated. That Wall Street Journal reporting that Trump insisted was a lie, was fake. It's fake news. It's fake news. Wall Street Journal's lying. I'm going to sue him for defamation. And once again, the Wall Street Journal was vindicated. And Donald Trump was proven once again to be a liar. Disgusting, despicable. I want to point out a couple of other things, though. Because again, this is just now breaking news. Who knows what we'll find in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. I want to point this out, which is that Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie, the Democrat and the congressperson in charge of sponsoring the legislation that Trump was, again, reluctantly forced into signing into law, they've weighed in, and they agree that this is not at all compliant.
The Justice Department's document dump this afternoon does not comply with Thomas Massie and my Epstein Transparency Act. They released one document from a New York grand jury of 119 pages, totally blacked out. This despite a federal judge ordering them to release that document. And our law requires them to explain redactions. There's not a single explanation for why that entire document was redacted. We have not seen the draft indictment that implicates other rich and powerful men who were on Epstein's rape island, who either watched the abuse of young girls or participated in the abuse of young girls and the sex trafficking. The reality is Pam Bondi has obfuscated for months. She first said there were no more documents to be seen. Now she's admitting and releasing hundreds of thousands of documents, but it is an incomplete release with too many redactions. Thomas Massey and I are exploring all options. It can be the impeachment of people at justice, inherent contempt, or referring for prosecution those who are obstructing justice. We will work with the survivors to demand the full release of these files, to demand justice for the Epstein class and accountability.
Good on Ro Khanna. Thomas Massey, again, Republican, replied to this and said, unfortunately, today's document released by Pam Bondi and Todd Blanche grossly fails to comply with both the spirit and the letter of the law that Trump just signed 30 days ago. Representative Ro Khanna is correct, and indeed he is. And I just want to close with this, again, just to give you an example. Trump spokespeople, again, admitting that this is partisanly weaponized because they are releasing images of President Clinton, Ghislaine Maxwell, and a redacted individual, while at the same time protecting Trump. And while at the same time claiming to be transparent. Friend of the show, Brian Tyler Cohen, again, making the same point that I do. It's funny you think anyone on the left cares about Bill Clinton, but I'm glad you think photos of U.S. presidents alongside pedophiles is worth highlighting. And it's true, because for every photo we have of Clinton, we have 5 to 10 of Trump and Epstein. So this is not the end of the story by any stretch of the imagination, and I genuinely believe that the Trump administration just made this, if you can believe it, even worse. Again, a disturbing anecdote from the Epstein files found by the intrepid reporters and journalists over at Midas Touch, and who knows what we'll see in a couple of hours. Just a really disturbing story of Donald Trump, Jeffrey Epstein, and a 14-year-old. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.
Seem smart by associating you with those universities? Smells like hypocrisy to me.
Because who was the first quantum physicist? And where did his degree come from? It didn't exist, right? There's no degree, there's no university. He went to the University of Life. Yeah. And he got his degree in nature.
I guess the first quantum physicist would have been Max Planck, and he got his doctorate at the young age of 21 at the University of Munich.
And you know, I would like to talk a little about how Elon Musk responded to this. And I think you had some thoughts about the way Donald Trump responded to the Rob Reiner killing.
You go first. I'll try.
I think Trump's response has gotten more attention. But I mean, I think it has, you know, untold depths of analytical potential. I think it's even weirder than it seems.
Yeah.
So should I?
You go first
that?
with Elon, because I think people are less familiar with that, and I know
Okay.
I was.
So, you know, there was this shooter at Brown, killed 2 people, wounded a number of students, and Musk, and this is typical of the way he gives it kind of lends momentum to conspiracy theories. And by the way, do you know how many Twitter followers he has before we get to this?
The most of anybody, I would guess.
Do you know how many he has?
No, how many?
The number? Guess. Come on. Go ahead.
Twitter, I don't know, 200 million.
The answer is that's pretty close, 230 million.
That's not bad.
Which is just a shocking amount of influence. So anyway, what you get is, you know, he does a lot of work with his replies. He just says things like,
How many of those are bots, though? Like, honestly. I know it's a lot, but, like, could half of them be bots? I don't see why not. Like, there's a lot of bots. I think in general, there's definitely more bots going around online than people. I'm pretty sure that's true. Like, leaving comments and whatnot.
100% or exactly.
Horrible.
In this, or horrible, yeah. If it's you know, if it's about like white genocide or something that he wants to reinforce, horrible. So in this case, what the tweet I guess said that he was replying to was, well, first of all, it was a quote tweet. So somebody had quoted that one of the students killed had been the vice president of the Republican Club. And so there's a tweet that just says that, which is true, I think. She was. And then somebody quote tweets it and says, they're going to keep calling the right Nazis so they can keep killing them. In other words, this person is saying it was a targeted killing. She was killed because she's a conservative, and it was in response to that Elon Musk says, exactly. 36,000 likes, 1,000 retweets, you know, a mere reply. And it's a subtle, you know, it's a kind of oblique, it's a somewhat oblique suggestion that it was a target killing. And he could say, well, when I said exactly, I meant to be endorsing this part of the blah, blah, blah. But still, he just does this all the time. And he does lend momentum to very dubious stuff. Now, in this case, it's not impossible that she was killed because she's a conservative, but I would say there were dozens of people in this room. It was a study session. The person who led the study session said what happened was this guy comes in, he says some stuff the guy can't even understand. Nobody can understand what he's saying, but he's clearly terrifying. I guess they could see his gun. Students start streaming for the exits. And what the guy said is it was the students in the middle who were furthest from the exits who got shot. Yeah. Okay? That's the guy leading the session said this. It just does not sound like the gunman walked in and identified this woman. He had gone there to shoot. I mean, leave aside the fact that, you know, when you're going to do a targeted killing on ideological grounds, you just usually do it as a target killing. I mean, I hate to be so tedious about this, but, you know, in debunking it, and look, there's still a 2% chance it could be true, but the point is, it is so irresponsible in the current climate, right, for him to fan the flames like this. Because the way countries dissolve into chaos and fighting and civil war is that one side gets, you know, an exaggerated sense of the extent to which it is attacked and persecuted. Then it does things that lead the other side to have the same exaggerated sense. And it's like a mutual amplification through positive feedback. And Musk so often plays this role. He is such a horrible human being. Although I don't honestly know for sure what's going on in his brain. I mean, he's like Trump in the sense that I don't have a theory I'm completely confident of.
I have somewhat of a theory because I see exactly what you're talking about. I sometimes end up on Twitter, less and less these days. And what I get, because I follow Elon Musk, I'm one of the 230 million, is I get these tweets or posts about rape, about some 14-year-old girl is raped always by an immigrant, by an Afghan immigrant.
Right.
And there's Elon Musk saying, horrible. How long are we going to stand for this? We must act, you know, basically doing, and this isn't a playbook of you know, pre-World War II Germany and every place where there's civil unrest.
Oh, they're raping our women.
They're raping our women.
The most powerful trope of xenophobia.
And in fact, there will always be crimes committed by people. And what somebody will do to rile up a group is to pick out the crimes done by the people you hate, broadcast them, accelerate them. Look, the Jews did this. Maybe a Jew did do this, but you take it, you focus it, you say, horrible, we must act, we are under attack. And so what you're describing is part and parcel what Musk wants to do, which really is simply to foment hate. To foment hate against the people he views as his enemies.
I guess. I mean, I honestly don't know. Like, it doesn't seem impossible to me that he is just epistemologically challenged, that he's very smart in an engineering context, but his understanding of human society is so dim, and there's a fair amount of evidence that, look, he can't read the room and so on, and that he has theory of mind deficit, he's just not good at assessing probabilities of the kind I was just trying to tackle, like, I really don't know to what extent it's conscious, dishonest trolling and to what extent, because, for example, he really was super pissed off, apparently, about one of his offspring who, became trans and disavowed Musk and whatever. So when he talks about the woke mind virus, I'm not sure he's not, kind of serious. And look, you can describe any ideology of mind virus in some kind of technical sense if you want to, but he takes it a little further than that.
I mean, there's a lot going on with Musk. I've always been, in some sense, a defender of him and saying he's extremely intelligent, off the charts, a genius in many ways, and a freaking moron in other ways. But what we're talking about, I think, can't be kind of brushed away as, oh, he's neurodivergent. This is not getting it. Because it's not like he has sort of a low.
He is neurodivergent.
He is neurodivergent, but I don't. But he doesn't get a pass for this because the conspiracies he promotes and the stories he pushes are always on one direction. It's never, somebody says, "Wow, some right-wing people are doing some terrible stuff," and Elon Musk says, "Horrible," makes you think. It's never that.
But that's the way cognitive biases are. Yeah. I mean, we all genuinely believe our adversaries and enemies are worse than us. We can't all be right because they think the same thing about me. Somebody's got it wrong.
The most flattering version of Musk, the most sort of cynical version is that he's cold-bloodedly and sort of with some sort of plan trying to structure hate against minority groups and hate against liberals. I think that the true version is he honestly believes it. He thinks that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I thought you were disagreeing, but I think to a considerable extent, I think he kind of does. And I mean, look, and there can be unflattering things about people that are true, and some of his unflattering beliefs maybe. But I mean, if you look at the sum total of his work on Twitter,
his oeuvre,
he's just buying into a lot of 100% bullshit and spreading it, and a lot of it is incendiary. He's a strange case. By the way, Susan Wiles, I sadly did not have time to read this. Did you hear about the Vanity Fair article where about Susie Wiles, Trump's chief of staff?
No.
She put up. I'll cut to the chase. She is quoted as calling Musk, quote, an odd duck.
Well, that's true. Even his fans must go with that.
So there's a lot of kind of partial quotes, and she says J.D. Vance has long believed in conspiracy theories or something. And then she complains that they're taken out of context. And she also says, much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. Paul, can you believe that? I thought Vanity Fair was just a transcript service. I am shocked.
You journalists just stand together, criticize one, everyone else get. How dare you?
I was just thinking, why did she submit to these interviews? Unless she was like the sister-in-law of the person who's going to write the story, and the answer seems to be she doesn't understand the first thing about journalism, which is that you leave some shit out. Okay.
I refuse to talk about Vanity Fair unless we're going to talk about Olivia Nuzzi.
I'm game. I'm game.
Have you been following Ryan Liz's Substack posts?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this is kind of a couple weeks old, right?
I know. One came out yesterday.
Oh, you keep reading them. Well, what's the latest from? So this is her former fiance, and I'm starting to sense that their relationship is not what it once was.
You picked that up. Yes. Yes, stupid. Yes.
So she's this journalist who I guess we think had sex with RFK Jr. and Liz says her fiance says had sex with Mark Sanford, famous hiker of the Appalachian Trail. We talked about
Appalachian Trail.
What's the latest? So bring us a news flash.
The latest is Ryan Liz is claiming that Olivia has done a long-standing campaign to try to portray him as an insane stalker and perhaps a violent person threatening her life. And
how come I haven't heard her doing that? Have you heard her doing that? Yeah. Oh, maybe she's just telling her friends in private that he's a stalker.
No, this ended up in she managed to plant the story. I mean, according to him, plant the story in some news outlets that were unusually credulous. There is, I mean, he tells this story and it's entertaining. There's a real, I got to zoom in on this because it's a question of the sort of psychology of responsibility, which is, he says he went to New York with a plan to spend 24 hours there, meet her, tell her, stop this. We got to try not to destroy each other. We got to be quiet about this. Let this go away. And around that, I'm here to support you. And then he says something, I don't have it in front of me. He says something like that. She's so scheming and bizarre and self-centered. We ended up spending 5 days in a hotel together. And I'm thinking,
I hate it when women scheme like that.
You know, you got to take some agency here.
Yeah.
Some responsibility. Okay, so if we talk about bad responses to murders, Trump surprised me. Like, even for Trump, his response to Rob Reiner's death was bizarre and strangely cruel. So not only did he insult the guy and say what an awful person he was for challenging Trump and critical Trump, he seemed to believe at the time that Rob Reiner was killed because of his anti-Trump beliefs. And while for any normal person this would lead to guilt, it would lead to saying, I'm not in favor of violence in any way, Trump seemed to say he's dead and it was his fault. He made people angry because of his hatred of me, Donald J. Trump. And so he got what he deserved. This is not verbatim, but this is the thrust of it. And I mean, that's how I read it.
Yeah,
and that's astonishing.
It is really weird. And that's why, like, you know, when people say, doesn't Trump know you're not supposed to speak ill of the recently deceased, that's not the weirdest thing.
Yeah, that's not the weirdest thing.
You know, here's what he says. Trump says so-and-so has passed away together with his wife, Michelle, reportedly due to the anger he caused others through his massive, unyielding, and incurable affliction with a mind-crippling disease known as, and this part's in caps, Trump derangement syndrome, sometimes referred to as TDS. He was known to have driven people crazy, in caps, by his raging obsession with President Donald J. Trump, with his obvious paranoia reaching new heights as the Trump administration surpassed all goals and expectations of greatness, and with the golden age of America upon us, perhaps like never before. And then I love the last one. May Rob and Michelle rest in peace.
That's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful, Donald.
It just, you know, I hear that, and it seems to me he says that mistakenly that Reiner and his wife were murdered because he was angry at Trump. He was murdered by people who were offended that he's angry at Trump, and he got what he deserves. And
yeah, he did say it was reportedly due to the anger.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I have a theory about this.
Oh, yeah?
About what was going on in his brain. And I do think, you know, look, he's going to be 80 in June. It may be that, you know, which is, how old was Biden when he ceased to finish sentences? I mean,
I know 80-year-olds.
Oh, sure, I know 100-year-olds. You know who's 100 is Dick Van Dyke, whose show, by the way, he turned 100 this week, whose show, the Dick Van Dyke Show, was created by Rob Reiner's father, Carl Reiner,
Oh, that's a good connection.
But I digress.
That's good.
Yeah, no, Dick Van Dyke, I think he's still, there's huge variation in this, obviously, but I'm just saying things could get weirder in Trump's brain, and I think in a way this is a sign of that. Now, my theory is
this is the second time, by the way, in the first half of our podcast, you are excusing people's terrible behavior in terms of cognitive impairments.
Did I excuse myself? You see, this, I don't do blame. I don't do blame.
You don't do blame. I want to remind you next time you do blame.
I don't believe in, I mean, I believe we have to apportion blame and punishment and credit and reward just to keep society humming. But I don't believe in the justice of like retribution, for example.
Okay, fair enough.
So, but anyway, here's my theory about what is kind of going on in Trump's thing. I have long been of the view that, contrary to a popular thing to say, which is, oh, he's smart, he's a lot smarter than people realize. He's not very smart. He has good bully instincts, and he's smarter than the average playground bully. And he has good political demagogue instincts, and he's as smart as the average political demagogue. But basically, much of his, and then he has specific skills. He's kind of funny in a way that's right for his audience, and so on. And, but basically, I think he's usually going on bully and or demagogue instinct. And one bully instinct is you try to get out the message that anyone who messes with you is punished. They suffer. So, like, for example, if you're a playground bully and somebody, and some guy who is your enemy, like, gets beat up in some part of town, and somebody says, were you in the vicinity of that? You know, the bully would say, you never know. Or, you whenever there's ambiguity, your instinct would be to, lend credence to the idea that the person suffered because they messed, right? Good bully instinct. So maybe that's just what's going on here. I don't know. And it's like, again, it's like Musk. Does he... I mean, Trump is so narcissistic, and in that way he's like Musk, that I can well imagine that if somewhere in the corners of Truth Social, somebody said, this is probably somebody standing up for Donald Trump who punished Rob Reiner as he should. I can well imagine Trump going, yeah, that's probably what happened.
I'm old enough to remember back in the day, you're not supposed to celebrate the idea that one of your followers murdered somebody because they were critical of you.
Well, that's a weird thing. Normally, you deny that, right? That's the way the dynamic works. The liberals don't want to accept, or whoever's being blamed for Charlie Kirk's murder, the left, the woke, whatever, would rather not have to admit that.
Imagine Gavin Newsom being president, and then Charlie Kirk gets murdered, and Newsom posts a tweet saying, this guy,
what he gets.
This guy was an asshole. He was critical of me, so I guess he got what he deserved. That nobody else would do that.
No, it is, and I'm glad you focused on that, because a lot of people are just saying, this is appalling. You shouldn't say this kind of thing. That's not the weirdest part. The weirdest part is what you zeroed in on, and it's really weird. And I do think it's weirder than first-term Trump.
Yeah, and I always wonder at what point do people who are his diehard followers say, that's kind of disgusting, that's a bit too much.
Well, we'll tune into the All In podcast this Friday to see when that finally happens. I mean, that's perfect, because Musk is the other guy who gets zero criticism. I mean, he's even more criticism-proof on All In, because Jason Calacanis, who's supposedly the token, I guess, non-something. I mean, he's barely, I don't know that he's left of center, but he's the closest thing to a token liberal or a token progressive. He will he will sometimes raise questions about Trump, but he has long been a total Musk suck-up and friend. So Elon Musk, and David Sachs is a protege of Musk. So Elon is untouchable, and you just got to ask, like, at some point, don't you just owe it to something to just start suggesting, like, the truth about a completely horrible, massively destructive human being? I'll ask you that.
What's the current state of the relationship between Musk and Trump?
Oh, it's good again. Musk's choice for NASA head apparently now is going to be NASA head. When they had their breakup, that was suddenly not going to be the case.
Okay.
But now it looks like Musk is going to have his man at NASA. Last I heard, and that seems to me pretty clearly a sign that they've kissed and made up.
Yeah. So Musk is kind of walking back the president's a pedophile thing.
Oh, he hasn't talked trash about Trump in a pretty long time, I think. Yeah.
More Epstein pictures have come out, and I'm relieved to see you aren't in any of them.
Yeah, well, you know.
Always been camera shy.
There's a lot about me you don't know, Paul. Yeah, the Epstein. Did you have time to read the?
I missed I did not read the Epstein financial story.
New York Times just did a big piece about how he actually wound up rich. I asked an AI to give me the big takeaway, and one of them was that he apparently convinced both Wexman and Leon Black, his two biggest benefactors, I think, that their finances were a mess and they couldn't trust the people who were taking care of their finances, and they needed to bring him in to straighten things out. Something like that.
Huh. Okay.
I don't know.
So that's the sort of non-conspiratorial theory of his wealth, because it doesn't involve foreign governments and intelligence entanglements.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, he's smart enough. Both of them were pretty ardently pro-Israel. And I'm sure, Epstein was smart enough, whatever his actual views on the subject were, to if he didn't share those beliefs, to feign them. Because, that really, it is a trust builder. Like, if you feel super strongly about any cause, and then there's somebody else who shares that belief, you're just more likely to trust them with everything, your money, whatever. So I think, the ideology probably figured in, at least in that way. But
so if once we finish these episodes, somebody, maybe Clark, maybe you, has a title for them, and the title for this one is like Bad Men or Trolls, because I want to sort of segue into Nick Fuentes, who I had never heard talk.
Okay, but first, Paul, what if they see the headline Bad Men, they see the picture of us, and they think we're the bad men?
Or trolls. That's true. That never occurred to me.
Any of this would make sense. So I don't think we should encourage these interpretations. But anyway, yeah, Nick Fuentes, you directed me to the Piers Morgan Nick Fuentes interview, and I listened to as much as I could stand.
I listened to 2 hours of it.
Oh my God.
I didn't sit sort of still. I did it while walking, doing chores, maybe fast forwarded past a bit of it, but I feel like I understand Nick Fuentes now. And here's a mystery to me, which I asked my son about, and my son partially helped resolve it. But here's the mystery. Think of Andrew Tate. So Andrew Tate is this MMA guy, very, very popular, big following. And I get the appeal of Andrew Tate. He's a muscled up, good-looking guy. Is mostly filmed with his shirt off, showing off all of his muscles. He's an MMA fighter, very, very masculine pursuit. And he boasts about sleeping with innumerable women. So now he's a misogynist and guy with an extremely ugly ideology. But I could see how a certain sort of young guy would say, I want to be like Andrew Tate. Now compare with Nick Fuentes, who is, based on his physical appearance, is not spent a huge amount of time in the gym, is, by his own confession, in his late 20s, is a virgin. He's not gay. I
don't think he considers it a confession, but yeah, he calls himself an incel.
He calls himself an incel. So I'm wondering,
I hadn't heard him say it, but yeah.
I could see why young guys would follow Andrew Tate. I wish they wouldn't. It's a very ugly set of views, but where's the, oh my God, I want to be like Nick Fuentes. I want to follow Nick Fuentes. So I asked my son, and he said, he was in his late 20s. He said that Andrew Tate appeals to a sort of older kind of guy who wants to have sex and be tough and everything. There's a certain community of young guys who are just sort of, they're, I don't know what term he used, not exactly soy boys, but they like to, they don't want to chase women. They might see themselves as incels, and not in a bad way. They're not sexually motivated. They're not motivated to bulk up. They're just kind of, not his word, but I call them kind of losers. And they see Nick Fuentes one of them.
Well, I think Yeah, they. I mean, I think first of all, Fuentes is valuable as some kind of barometer. He's got a following, and it's what the appeal is an interesting question. And I certainly don't think. I mean, I think his coalition is, for one thing, people who are sick of hearing that they're not allowed to say disparaging things about groups of people they don't like.
That was a big part of his shtick with Piers Morgan. So,
and for some of them, it's women, and for some of them, it's because they haven't had success with women.
Yeah.
And that's part of the coalition.
And so Piers Morgan, who I think is, I hadn't actually heard much of him either. So he's a good interviewer. He's a little bit, I don't know, encouraging. In some way, inadvertently promoting this guy. But Piers Morgan would be like outraged. How dare you make a Holocaust joke? How dare you? Don't you understand? And then Fuentes would say, it's funny, lighten up. You're an old guy, nobody cares. Oh, you're pearl clutching and everything. And that's the way it was, you know. Piers Morgan said, you're calling yourself a racist. How can you? And Fuentes said, I'm a racist. Ha ha, get old, gonna cry. And that was for 2 hours. That's what happened.
Now, on that part, I kind of missed what came before. Did he initially say, yes, I'm a racist, everyone's a racist?
Yes. So in some way, it's horseshoe theory, which is the people who believe everybody's a racist are people on the extreme left and the extreme right. Mm-hmm. You know, I know people who think everyone's a racist. We are all biased. We're all racist. And there's no real difference between a member of the KKK and you and me. We all have these unconscious biases. And then on the extreme right, you have Fuentes saying, basically, you know, what he said, and it's not, you know, in some way, I think there's a germ of truth here. The Jews care about the Jews. The Jews think, you know, like the Jews. The Muslims like the Muslims. So I'm a white guy. I'm a white European guy. I like my own kind. And a Christian, and I like Christians, and it's you, Piers Morgan, who are some sort of beta cosmopolitan who falls outside all of that.
Yeah, I found Piers Morgan very frustrating because I think they just had kind of a common interest.
That's right.
In not getting clear on anything, you know, like and just persisting with the outrage. And so
that's right. That's right. Fuentes' interest was to look how offensive I can be. You know, I'm gonna laugh at you. And Morgan's interest was saying, "You're disgusting. This is contemptible."
Yeah, I mean, Fuentes. So a lot of what he generates outrage for is making blanket statements about groups, right? Women are this, Jews are that, blacks are this, and. Now, they did drill down a little on one of them, and he just kind of backed off what that one seems to me. And I'm referring to this quote. I don't have it before me. He says something about, I think, about Jews and women and blacks. And the thing he says about blacks is basically, and blacks should be jailed for the most part. And what he says he meant by that is that the ones who have committed crimes should be in jail. Well, that's a very different thing to say, right? And the thing Piers Morgan didn't do and kept not doing is in this case, say, wait a second, do you not understand that when people hear you say blacks should be jailed for the most part, they think you just mean that most blacks should be in jail? I mean, you know, because in a way, the thing you absolutely, positively could have nailed Fuentes on is, it's like Musk. It's the completely irresponsible use of language, except that I think Musk means, you know, Musk may mean what he said, whereas Fuentes, when you press him, at least in this case, he actually backed way off of it. And I just would have liked to see Morgan say, no, wait, what? And you know what another example is? When he kept saying, yeah, Hitler's cool. Hitler's cool. I am, you know, my instinct is to say, wait, let's just clear. What do you mean by cool?
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they say cool, they mean worth moral emulation, right? They lump that together with cool. Cool people are people you emulate. Well, what do you mean? And Piers Morgan never did that kind of drilling down, and that would have been useful because I do think to a large extent the game Fuentes is playing, and I assume it's a conscious game, but is to speak in blanket generalizations, but to be ready to say something more precise and subtle if you actually challenge it.
Maybe, or maybe you're giving him too much credit. I don't know.
Maybe.
I mean, he would say things like, he said, you know, if you're white, you shouldn't have any black friends. You know, you should stay away from blacks. They're dangerous. And then Piers Morgan says, you have black friends. I have plenty of black friends. Okay. He would talk about the Holocaust is blown out of proportion, whatever. And then Piers Morgan said, how many people died in the Holocaust? 6 or 7 million.
He said 7.
He gave us an extra million.
He's a maximalist.
That's right. Although at one point, and I think I might have missed it, I saw a quote, he said, or maybe 100 times more, which I take it as like a little, giving the finger, saying, but he came off the whole time as a naughty 14-year-old, talking shit to upset people. And,
but I mean, he is verbally pretty agile.
Yeah, he doesn't have ums and ahs and hesitations.
And he doesn't waste time on nuance. That's for sure. Doesn't waste time trying to find exactly the right statistical characterization of the group correlated behavior he's talking about. But he comes off as sincere. Did you listen to the Tucker Carlson interview a few weeks ago? Well, that's that's different because Carlson's not as unsympathetic, although he eventually gets around to challenging things he says about Jews. But that's interesting because you see how when he's wholly unchallenged, which he usually is, right? He's speaking to his audience. There's no antagonistic interrogator. You see how he could just come off as kind of the real deal. He sounds sincere. He tells the story of how he started out by just asking innocent questions about Israel. Why do we give Israel so much money? Gets blowback from Ben Shapiro, blah, blah, blah. And he's an effective rhetorician. And I guess I'm alarmed that the, again, unnuanced things he says have as big an audience as they seem to have. On the other hand, people like Piers Morgan are helping build it up.
I think that's exactly what Piers Morgan is doing. I don't know. I mean, in some way I was underwhelmed. Like, I don't mean like, he did not persuade me of his views. I don't mean that. I mean that I listened to somebody like Tucker Carlson, and I've always been impressed with Tucker Carlson as a guy with a lot of sharpness and a lot of intelligence, directed often in malevolent ways, but a guy of real powerful rhetorical gifts. And I will say this again, I will not be surprised to see him rise high in the Republican Party, and I can see him as a presidential nominee one day. But Fuentes just seemed like a troll, an articulate troll, but a troll.
I guess. I mean, it's kind of like Musk. I'm not 100% sure what's going on in his head. Look, I think he basically has a version of the beliefs he professes.
Yeah.
I think he by and large blames women for the fact that he's never had sex with one. And although I don't know, I couldn't tell. I mean,
that I couldn't tell. And he actually never, maybe it's not as relevant, but he never, Morgan never pursued it. I would have thought he might think that it says you can't have sex before marriage, and he's not married yet.
Well, I wondered. He says he's a devout Catholic or something?
Sort of, yeah. There was actually a moment where where Morgan said that if the Pope repudiated his beliefs, what would Fuentes feel about this? And Fuentes said, I'd be very hurt. And I kind of like that. That was, I think, a rare moment of honesty. And it suggests that the guy really is Catholic. And, if you're Catholic, you don't want, I think this happened to J.D. Vance already, but you don't want the Pope to crap all over you.
Yeah, well, better than Steve Bannon, who would say, I don't think he should be Pope anyway. But Bannon has an alternative Pope.
Really?
Yeah, he does.
Like one in the wings, he would like.
Oh, there's a there's this right-wing guy who who they put people like Bannon push. So yeah, that was it's good to see this kind of respect for a basically left of center Pope, I guess, coming from Nick Fuentes. But yeah, it's he's a little bit of a puzzle. It's not a good sign that he has much of a following at all.
No, it really is not.
I don't know. So what else? So should we? Are we almost to overtime time? What time are we at?
We have so much more to talk about. We have Oliver Sacks and a new
Oliver Sacks quasi scandal.
The revelations that the man really did not mistake his wife for a hat. Maybe not. Maybe not totally.
And I actually have an anecdote that's very relevant to this. I edited him.
Oh.
And had lunch with him once. And there was an episode in the course of our editing that is strikingly germane to the allegation here, which I guess is pretty well documented, which is that he put words in the mouths of the patients whose behavior he was documenting in these pieces. Now, did he write pieces for the New Yorker? Because this piece was in the New Yorker, but it wasn't like cast as an expose.
No.
They kind of buried the lead.
It's by Rachel Aviv, who's a very good writer, who writes about, among other things, about mental illness, and she's a very, very good writer. And it was largely Oliver Sacks' experience as a gay man, in a world very unforgiving of gay men and his problems in finding love and so on. And you're like halfway into the article. Basically, what this article is built on the discovery of journals that had not yet been by Sacks' own journals, which had not yet been revealed to the public.
Mm-hmm.
I gotta say, maybe we'll talk about this more, but I don't think the neuroscience community is going to be stunned at this. I remember talking when I was a graduate student at MIT, saying, "Oh my God, Oliver Sacks, have you heard this thing about it?" And somebody who knew a lot about it feels that is total bullshit. He is just making shit up. People don't do that. And apparently, this was true. Everything was made up. All of these wonderful stories that capture these perfect. So let me just jump in. We're going to talk about this, Steve. So the New Yorker thing came up. I put it on Twitter on Substack.
Go on to overtime before too long, just so that you don't give away too much for free, which I know you hate to do, Paul. But go ahead.
I put it on Substack notes. Nobody looked at it. Steve Pinker, my friend, had a little thing on it in Twitter, and then of course that caused it to go viral. That's what you ended up reading. And because maybe you don't read the New Yorker when it appears on your mailbox. But Steve said something which struck me as true, which is, where's the New Yorker's famous fact checkers?
Yeah, so in other words, Sacks had written some of this stuff for the New Yorker, right?
Yes, although I'm now wondering whether...
He also wrote for the New York Review of Books.
Whether it was excerpts of his books, which maybe run a different fact-checking standard.
No, although at certain times, who was his editor? I just watched part of this documentary about Robert Gottlieb, who was an editor. Knopf maybe was not Sacks' editor, though, but he was also editor of the New Yorker. Probably during part of this time. Anyway,
we should talk about this.
What's that?
We should talk about this more in overtime.
Oh, definitely. It's an interesting phenomenon.
It is very interesting. And
he was a very interesting guy. I mean, I don't know when he died, but for people real young may have no idea who he is. But for people of our generation, and even a little younger, well, mine and even yours and even younger, that's kind of 2.5 generations. He was this superstar, and he was this, this humane, physician. He was, so he was, and I think, he was kind of the left-wing medical scientist in a certain sense. I
mean, he had a movie made of his. I think Awakenings was his first book, played by Robin Williams.
Right. That was the one where he gives them the drug L-Dopa. I don't think they were Parkinson's patients, although L-Dopa has mainly used for Parkinson's. But anyway, they had been in some sense kind of frozen. And then L-Dopa comes along and he gives it to them. And the movie is about the magical things that happen. And it turns out that one of the things that in his book that it's based on, he attributes to one of the patients is something that the patient almost certainly didn't say, because Sachs had been, in his own writing, he is seen saying it separately and before that. It's his, it's some line of his, it's some reference to the real, is it Rilke or Rilke, the poet, whatever?
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, he was a huge, you know, I guess he was in both the New York Review of Books and the New Yorker. My boss,
where did you edit him for?
It was at the Sciences, and my Paul Labossi, who was the editor, said to me, when he was just starting to take off, I'm sure this was before the Awakenings book, I assume it was the early 80s. He said, this guy's going to be big, you know, like, let's, you know, we should get him on our pages. So I contacted him somehow, and we did. But, Paul, we should go into overtime. Okay. I'll tell you the rest of the story. It is germane. It's a real cliffhanger.
Other topics?
Speaking of which,
the pluribus?
Pluribus? I have some shit to talk about pluribus.
Oh, I hope don't. I love the show. Don't ruin it.
Well, we just may have to disagree, Paul. No, I like it in a lot of ways, but
is it too slow for you, Bob?
We don't want to. No plot spoilers,
okay,
Paul.
Okay. The second thing is, and this is,
and episode 7 removed all doubt. Okay.
It was leisurely.
Leisurely
the way
is
I like
such a fine description of that kind of shit.
Also, and this is for those academics among us who stay through the whole thing. Apparently, it turns out that students in university of like Brown and Harvard, over 20% of them are designated as disabled. And it's disabled in the sense of cognitively disabled in terms of ADHD and associated disorders. And it's an example of incentives at work. And we can talk about that.
This is something we may not disagree on, actually.
Oh, okay. Well, pluribus, we have plenty of disagreeing. I adore the show.
Okay. So thanks, everyone. The way you can get access to the overtime segment is to be a paid subscriber to either Paul Bloom's Small Potatoes or the Non-Zero newsletter, and you can go to those sites and find the missing what you'll be missing if you're not. And also, Paul, should we say a little about how heartened they should feel by the knowledge that they're supporting endeavors such as ours? Or should we just be strictly transactional about it and say, look, you want to hear Bob's Oliver Sacks anecdote? Let's see a little green.
Well, we can't help but say, as a wiser person said, democracy dies in darkness. So people, supporting us is really the last bastion of rationality and the life of the mind, honesty. Your
honesty dies in darkness, folks.
Your sharp journalistic instincts and my plucky Canadian enthusiasm. So smash the like button, enroll, send us money.
PCE, I think that deserves an acronym.
If people are watching this on video, you will see there's pieces of wood behind me because we're renovating. This has not come cheap. So just saying.
Let me just say in passing, it has been shown in the past that Paul's background is 100% fake. Now, maybe he's changed, maybe he's turned over a new leaf, and maybe the problem is that because we're not recording on Zoom this time, he can no longer, be quite that dishonest. But in the past, it's all been a lie.
The wood is real.
Okay, we'll take your word for it.
Taken out of context, that's a strange sentence. Okay, here we go.
Okay, all right. Thanks, folks.
Bye.
We're heading into overtime.
Hey everyone, many of you saw my recent video detailing what I would have said to Brett Weinstein if he wasn't a little coward who declined to debate me on Piers Morgan. That commentary ended once my part of the segment began, and a lot of people asked me to upload my bit separately since they didn't want to give Piers the traffic. So that's what this is. Please enjoy.
Well, listening to my previous two guests, and here to give his verdict on whether RFK is making America healthy again, is Dave Farina, the host of Professor Dave Explains. Well, Dave, welcome to Uncensored.
Thanks for having me.
Your response to what you were just listening to?
I mean, where to begin? I mean, I'm familiar with Brett Weinstein. I'm not familiar with his opponent, but I know, you know, I've dealt with him and his brother. They're peas in a pod. Yeah, Brett just basically peddles conspiracies to generate a cult following online. A lot of what he said was absolutely ridiculous. He went on a tirade about, you know, aluminum-based adjuvants not being tested. Absolutely not. They've been tested rigorously. They're shown to be safe. The levels of aluminum are comparable to what are ingested through breast milk by children, stuff like that. It's just basically his whole shtick is just kind of like, I'm just asking questions and look at all of these things, and there's just absolutely no basis for it. I'm a little alarmed that both of them had anything positive to say about RFK. I don't think that there is really anything positive that you can say about him. He's been a complete train wreck, antithetical to the idea of public health in every way, shape, and form. So I'm sure that we're going to get into the specifics of how that is the case.
Well, I've got to say, I've interviewed him a number of times, RFK Jr. I went into it thinking that everything I read would mean I would have a crackpot in front of me espousing crackpot ideas. Actually, I didn't get that feeling from him. And I've watched very carefully the way that he has performed so far. The measles crisis was interesting because he took a bit of time, but then came down and publicly endorsed the vaccination, which I think surprised people. I completely agree with him that America needs to wean itself off over-processed food. I think he's right to try and get Americans fitter. America has shocking health rates, really, comparative to, say, Asian countries. The obesity rates are alarming. So there are lots of things where I find myself nodding to him. What is it about him that concerns you so much? Because obviously you don't agree with what I just said, but what concerns you so much?
So you just asked three separate questions, so I'll answer each of them. Number one, he absolutely is a crackpot. He has pushed miasma theory, terrain theory, pushed ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. He promotes raw milk. He continues to push lies about vaccines causing autism, just all manner of blatant pseudoscience. And he's leveraging his position to have this essentially is like a repeat of Stalin backing Lysenko, where you have this sort of state-sanctioned pseudoscience trying to usurp actual science. And that's what we're seeing with all of the layoffs, discarding the entire vaccine safety panel. You have even top experts like Peter Marks saying, and I quote, "It has become clear that truth and transparency are not desired by the secretary, but rather he wishes subservient confirmation of his misinformation and lies." So he's just surrounding himself with yes men that will promote pseudoscience. He's even threatening to ban federal scientists from publishing research in respected journals, demanding they publish in the state-sanctioned alternative. So this is all driving scientific talent out of the country, preventing people from emigrating here to be part of the scientific community. It's very disastrous, the pseudoscience. But then speaking to what you said about vaccines and ultra-processed foods, his vaccine rhetoric is directly responsible for deaths. And you guys have been focusing on the Texas outbreak, but let's not forget the Samoa outbreak, where he is absolutely 100% directly responsible for 83 deaths over there. He is the one who went over there, met with anti-vaccine advocates, and pushed this false narrative about the outbreak being due to a vaccine rather than actual measles. 83 deaths on his head, no remorse. Over here in Texas, right, obviously he, when he gets cornered, he's going to backtrack and say, oh, no, by the way, MMR's fine, everybody should get it. But he's the one pushing all these long debunked conspiracies about the autism thing, which goes all the way back to Andrew Wakefield, the massive fraud from your neck of the woods, and then to go to ultra-processed foods. Look, this is the one thing where it's like, yeah, junk food is bad for you. Are we going to give this guy a medal for saying that junk food is bad for you? Everybody knows that, right? I mean, it's like, what is like, it also speaks to the hypocrisy of the right as well, though, because, not like this huge fan of Michelle Obama or anything, but she had an initiative to make school lunches more healthy, and Republicans jumped on her. Federal overreach, big government, all this stuff. And now RFK comes around and says, oh, yeah, by the way, junk food is bad. And everyone's clapping and cheering like he's some kind of messiah. What is the plan here? Ban fast food, ban soda, ban ice cream? I don't think that that his orange boss would be too pleased if McDonald's is outlawed. So what's the end goal here? Right? This is just rhetoric to try to make it seem like he's on the side of the public when he just absolutely isn't, right? He pretends to be this bulwark fighting against big pharma and everybody in the private industry. But as soon as he gets the reins, as soon as he gets the keys to the castle, what does he do? He guts all of the federal institutions that are meant to protect the public against the private sector. Thousands of layoffs at the FDA, at the CDC, right, the entire vaccine panel. What's happened to the vaccine panel? He replaced them with Robert Malone, all these other frauds. Then if these vaccines are no longer recommended, then low-income families, low-income children don't have access to them for free anymore. So all of this rhetoric about not wanting to take vaccines away from people, it's actually specifically what he's doing. So all of it is a facade, all of it.
When you take a specific, for example, like mRNA vaccines, I've heard exactly the same rhetoric that R.F. Kennedy Jr. Says about this from a top UK oncologist. I mean, literally one of the best in the country. He absolutely concurs that there are genuine issues about the mRNA vaccine. And I would just use that as an example where COVID in many ways did reveal that science is an ever-evolving thing, that sometimes people take implacable positions that turn out to be completely untrue. I remember the scientists collectively assuring us that if you took the vaccine, then you could not transmit the virus. And then it turned out that was nonsense. Early on, they said, you shouldn't use masks. Then they became mandatory and so on. And then later, it looks like masks weren't that helpful anyway, etc. So science evolves and it moves. And I guess my overview would be, if the experts have been so expert in America in terms of health in the last 50 years, why is America so unhealthy?
Okay, again, that's like three different questions. First of all, what you're attributing to the scientific community is actually just a couple of things that Biden said offhand, right? In terms of you won't get infected, things like that. That's not what doctors said. Okay, leaving the why Americans are so unhealthy thing for later. We should talk about mRNA vaccines, because you just had Brett Weinstein on, and he is one of the main purveyors of all of these lies and conspiracies about, fabricating all of these millions of deaths and all of these other things. His opponent was a little more reasonable in terms of discussing the COVID vaccines. So in terms of we absolutely cannot deny the efficacy and the success in saving millions of lives for these COVID vaccines, especially at this lightning speed in which they were produced, where other therapies did fail. So to talk as though that's not true is ridiculous. But then looking at this, 500 million cut for future, you had a clip of someone else talking about all of these other alternate therapies that we're not going to get anymore because this was cut. I mean, this is absolutely indefensible, right? There is a kernel of truth to some of the rhetoric about the mRNA vaccines in terms of the uridine pseudouridine, the N-methyl pseudouridine swap, which is responsible for the spike protein lingering longer than we expected. It's found 6 months later in muscle tissue and things like that. So that was a bit unexpected. But how do you? And by the way, all of the side effects have been completely overblown by frauds like Brett Weinstein, completely fabricated. All of these, the myocarditis and all this stuff, just complete false rhetoric, right? So it's not that there's nothing there, right? We can talk about why is this spike protein hanging around longer than we expected to, but how do you answer that question? You do more research, right? You study it. You don't gut the FDA and CDC. You don't have billions of dollars of budget cuts. You don't push brilliant scientists out of the country and prevent other brilliant foreign scientists from coming into the country due to RFK's policies and Trump's attitude towards immigrants. It's just a complete mess. I mean, it's a deterioration of the American scientific community right before our eyes, and RFK and Trump's administration are directly responsible for it. That's really all there is to it. What was the last?
But on that big picture, the big picture point was about why, if the experts have been so expert, why is America so unhealthy?
I mean, look, it's poverty, right? America is absolutely unique among the world powers in terms of, number one, not having, affordable health care. It's not having access to healthy food, not having access to affordable health care. This is what's driving health concerns. So if we want to address these things, obviously we have to figure out how to make healthcare better. And so that involves standing up to health insurance industries and things like that. But also just kind of taking it more seriously, if we want to understand, right, RFK pushes this, this explosion in chronic disease, 54% prevalence, and it's all magically lined up with 1989 in the vaccine schedule and junk food. It's complete rubbish. I mean, we know junk food isn't good for you, right? That's not news. And okay, what are you going to do? Like enforce laws that prevent people from manufacturing and eating fast food? Good luck with that if you want to try that. But more importantly, why don't we research the genetic basis for a lot of these diseases? Things, certainly behavioral and neurological diseases, are largely genetic. And then even stuff like obesity has a very large genetic component. Why aren't we researching that more? And then just ultimately economics. I mean, I'd say post-World War II, just America has become this venue where, the oligarchy is just consistently vying for supremacy here, specifically being that U.S. is the, at the moment remains, I believe, the premier global power. That may change soon or is already in the process of changing. But that's why we see this continued transference of wealth from the masses into the oligarchy, and that's going to generate incredible amounts of poverty. And with that, you don't have access to healthy food, you don't have access to healthcare. That's the main problem. That's what we should be focusing on.
Okay, Dave Farina, thank you very much. Well, listening to all that was Brett Giroir, one of the two people I interviewed earlier, who stayed on just to listen to what Dave had to say. Brett, what's your response to that?
Well, I agree with a lot of what was said. I mean, it's hard in a debate format to jump on everything that's being said by the other Brett, but things like, adjuvants have been studied forever, and they're not linked with these catastrophic consequences. The mRNA vaccines have saved millions of lives. Yes, we can always improve our vaccine safety monitoring, but the vaccine safety monitoring, particularly the prospective one that's throughout the health systems that report to the CDC, is pretty good. And they saw myocarditis very early. Myocarditis is real. It's not due to mRNA vaccines. It's a class effect, probably related to the spike protein that we saw with adenovirus. And so I agree. I certainly agree that stacking the ACIP panel, the vaccine panel, at CDC and eliminating all inputs from scientific societies like IDSA is just a way to guarantee that the result that he wants, the secretary wants on vaccines, is gonna happen, and to put some modicum of legitimacy there, because, well, the ACIP said this is what we should do, but he's already stacked the ACIP with people who have pseudoscientific beliefs. I do want to say one thing about America being unhealthy, and I want to foot stomp a lot of what you said. One factor that I think is very important is, you have to change the reimbursement system. We have a sick care system that reimburses for sick care. I will happily reimburse you to amputate somebody's leg who has diabetes and vascular disease, but we don't put the money prospectively into access to preventative care, access to healthy foods. So the entire reimbursement system almost guarantees that we maintain a sick society, and it doesn't support the maintenance of health. And in addition to everything that was said, which I agree with, that reimbursement system absolutely needs to be changed to be a health promoting system and not a sick care system.
Just finally, Brett, Dave painted a pretty apocalyptic picture of how he views RFK Jr. running America's health. I detect you're not quite as grim-faced about it, but what would your response be to Dave to maybe reassure him?
So I can't reassure him because I don't know, right? I don't know how this is all going to turn out. Having been assistant secretary and worked for someone who I think is an outstanding secretary, Alex Azar, who is very smart, understood how to make things happen, no craziness whatsoever, very science-based. I think a secretary is going to have an opportunity to do maybe 2 or 3 things, and that's going to be it. Maybe 2 or 3 or 4 things, and I'm trying to support the things that I think are very important that could be beneficial. And if this secretary did nothing else but work on nutrition, raise nutrition as a national priority, elimination of diets, I think that could be very helpful for the country, right? On the other hand, instilling vaccine hesitancy, fear of vaccines, pseudoscience on the headlines, like the mRNA vaccines are killing more people than they help, gutting the scientific system that are at our agencies. These could be catastrophic, right? And that's why we're having this. That's why we're having this discussion here. So my goal is to help promote what I think is in the best public health's interest. He is our secretary, and until he is not our secretary, which may be in 3.5 years or maybe tomorrow, Trump does fire people. While he's our secretary, I want to promote and support the things that I think are beneficial for public health, and I want to come on shows like this to argue with things that I think are detrimental. And the whole vaccine policy, his whole tenor about vaccines, his whole gutting the scientific infrastructure about vaccines, I think is highly detrimental and could be catastrophic.
Dave, final word to you.
I agree with all of that. The only thing I would emphasize is that this veneer of concern about nutrition and public health, it's a facade. It's just a smokescreen to make people think that he is actually concerned with the masses when he's really just there to implement this agenda. He's just gutting all these federal institutions. Right? It's very much aligned with what Trump and Musk were trying to do with Doge, right? Going in, trying to pretend that, they're cutting all of this waste, when in reality they're just gutting the institutions that have any ability to regulate the private sector, right? It's all in line with this continued transference of wealth from the general public into the oligarchy, and RFK is right in line with that. As much as he tries to portray himself as the polar opposite of that, it is what he is.
Trump was asked recently in an interview, he eats so much fast food. Is he a good example? He said, well, all the people who've been lecturing me about eating fast food have passed. And then he did a big smirk. I'll just leave this with that. Because one thing's for sure, Trump is ridiculously healthy for a guy of nearly 80 who's had the diet he's led. Maybe it's the lack of alcohol might be the key, I think, to why he may be as healthy as he is, but we shall see. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it.
So that was me on Piers Morgan. How do you think I did? Do you think Piers learned anything? Do you think his audience learned anything? I'd like to think so, but it's hard to tell. Would I do it again? Sure, for the right topic. It always makes for good content, right? I'll see you next time. Hey everyone, you've all seen me make fun of Eric Weinstein a few times before, but it seems like some other science communicators are starting to get in on the fun. I'm talking about Sean Carroll, who recently pummeled Eric on the Piers Morgan program, and it's very, very funny. Let's take a look. In case you need some context on who these guys are, Sean Carroll is a well-respected theoretical physicist who specializes in quantum mechanics and cosmology, and he does quite a bit of highly reputable science communication through magazine articles, books, and public appearances. I had always been appreciative of Sean, but his status got bumped up several notches in my eyes due to this segment you're about to see. Eric, on the other hand, is an obnoxious pseudo-intellectual fraud whose sole purpose is to spread anti-academia and generalized anti-science rhetoric on the internet at the behest of his paymaster, anarcho-capitalist Peter Thiel. He's never done an ounce of science, yet pretends to be as relevant as actual scientists, while constantly shitting on them for not accepting him into their club, despite never having done anything to warrant their attention other than acting like a loser troll. Like any true grifter in this domain, he has a fake theory of everything called geometric unity, which we shredded to pieces in a lengthy video featuring him and his equally useless brother Brett, so be sure to check out that video for more background information on precisely what a fraud this guy is. Anyway, there's not much else to cover, the rest will speak for itself, so let's go ahead and get to the carnage.
For centuries, scientists have grappled with the most fundamental question of them all. What is reality? Well, up until the 20th century, it was considered to be a matter of common sense. We lived in a material and objective reality, perhaps created by God, but one that could be accurately measured and predicted. And then came Einstein, who revolutionized everything by saying that things were a lot more relative than all that.
Not a great start for Piers. Nothing about relativity contradicts the idea of our universe being material, objective, measurable, and predictable. But absolutely nobody expects Piers to understand even middle school level physics, so let's brush right past that.
Space could bend time. Mysterious black holes existed. The universe was expanding. But even Albert Einstein failed to truly grapple with what came next, the wild world of quantum physics, where nothing plays by the rules, even Einstein's.
Okay, not space-bending time, it's one thing called space-time. Einstein didn't actually discover black holes or even coin the term. That the universe is expanding was discovered by Hubble, and quantum physics pretty comfortably predates general relativity, having begun its formulation in 1900 with Planck and getting its next boost from Einstein himself with his 1905 paper on the photoelectric effect, while general relativity was published in 1916.
Man, just as I'm starting to pop off, they boot me out every 5 seconds. Every single map, it seems like. Fucking annoying. I'll be right back.
It seems like bait. The thing I don't know if we need,
banana phone, banana phone, ring, 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 banana phone, banana phone, ring, 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 banana phone, ring, ring, ring.
You don't even need
coined the term that the
shock conduction. It charges faster and has less cost. The vines. We have rapid casting. Let's see what he did here. Rapid casting, considered casting. It's doing like pretty much the same things. So he's thinking accelerated growth is bad for the vines, so he doesn't go for the bombs on the vines. The bombs are mostly for AoE, are they not? Shouldn't that make sense? Shouldn't we just go full single target on the vines? Or do you guys put bombs on your vines? Well, you can't use a baby thunderstorm. I thought you couldn't use a baby thunderstorm because then it doesn't.
Just so many good ideas for having a chat.
Level 5 thunderstorm says that you cannot drench monsters above level 32, and you need the monsters to be drenched to auto-apply shock, right? I could try with my bonus skill levels, slotting it in and seeing what level it becomes. Let me see here. I could try a 5 and see what it becomes. It's a level 7, and it can only cannot drench above 39. His PoE ninja is much different now. Right, but didn't he move into like a super giga endgame variant?
Didn't he move into like a super giga endgame variant?
Like, I actually I don't have much interest in that, believe it or not, because I just want to make a guide for you guys that's like one button that murders everything. That's my goal. I don't want to be... Well, I don't want to be like a mirror character. I don't care about that. Maybe I make a mirror character for myself, for fun, after. But I just want to make a 2-button build where this clears everything. I do think we need to put a chiming staff in our offhand. I don't know if he does that, but that's like a common tech for all spell builds. He does do Thunderstorm, okay. Okay, so let's think about this for a second. Thrashing Vines, huh? Well, I think Rapid Casting is in. I'm not even sure Heft is in. I'm not even sure that Considered Casting is in. I'm not 100% sure on this. Once again, I'm guessing Super Critical is going to be bait. Unless I'm missing something. Maybe Dead Rabbit knows something I don't. Let's see here. So let's think about this. Considered Casting, Concentrated Area. Absolutely be right. Heft Fizz Mastery. I think Fizz Mastery is absolutely in. I think Fizz Mastery has got to be in here. I don't get it. Where's Fizz Mastery? Here. I think this is going to be, yeah, That's gonna be Giga, and then I need to buy. I need to buy another. Wait, not here. Here, currency exchange here. Jeweler. Perfect jeweler's orb. This 66. Give me that. All right. I'm gonna actually make a character this time. A real character. Okay. Now it's super critical or heft or. I already have heft, so. It's either super critical or the one with the less area. I have a feeling the less area is going to be way more damage. Like a significant increase over super critical. I'm just trying to think here for a second. Okay. I think it's called concentrated area. Let's see here. I mean it. Oh my god, we have to take this. We have to. Oh my god. Okay. We have to do that. Oh my god. Okay. This is gonna fucking murder. Hey, Dead Rabbit, you leave it. Awesome, buddy. Thanks so much for the raid and everything. Let me ask you a question. Do you think super critical is bait? Like, I've changed super critical for Fizz Mastery. It's not even close. Tooltip wise, and we can't calculate it on POB because POB doesn't consider like the thing that actually would make it actually calculate this. You think it is bait, so you think it's bad. We don't want to do